So, this trip on magic mushrooms happened in March of 2021, and I still think about it daily. Before this trip, I had done mushrooms one time, and other than puking in the Giant Eagle parking lot, it was a really great time. So that's why I wasn't worried to try it again a couple days later. The day starts off doing normal shit, hanging out with my friend, we'll call him V. Throughout the day, we were drinking, and we started off with some champagne. As the day progressed, we kept on drinking beers, and I believe I had some liquor. So as you can tell, I was getting pretty tipsy. I'd say I was at that middle point where you were tipsy and felt drunk, but if you had one or two more beers, you definitely feel the alcohol strongly. That's the best way to describe it. I was feeling great, loving interactions, and just having a good time. The normal drinking stuff. Oh, and I believe I did take some phenibut, which definitely affected the trip. I do not recommend mixing phenibut with anything except kratom. It can lead to some serious interactions that you do not want. I might do a whole video on phenibut itself because it caused me nothing but pain. That's why that was the last time I did that stuff. Back to the story. Whenever I get drunk, I always get ideas in my head that I wouldn't get if I was sober. My alcohol and phenibut altered mind reminded me about the rest of the shrooms I had in my book bag. Remembering that I loved the trip last time I ate them, I decided that night I would take it again. But this was a lot more than the first time. The amount I did is hard to explain because I didn't weigh it or anything like that. The first time I did it, I think I ate about 5 or 6 full mushrooms, with the stem, tip, and everything. I don't know if that's a lot, but it probably wasn't, considering I wasn't tripping too hard. I kinda just went off of that, but most of the mushrooms I had left were grinded up, like how you can grind weed. I definitely did a lot more than the first time, and the amount I took was probably around the size of 1.5 golf balls. It's been a while, so I'm not really sure. I just remember it was quite a lot. Especially since most of it was grinded, and that's a lot more than just having the actual mushroom there. I put the shrooms in a blender with my fruit smoothie, and I could barely taste it. After I finished the whole concoction, I waited for it to kick in. I don't remember when it exactly kicked in, but when it did, I remember talking to V and seeing the world as like a melting picture. V's face started to shift and look cool, but if this was just the beginning, then I could only imagine what the rest of the trip was gonna be like. I think seeing this world just melt around me made me freak out. By the way, I used to never freak out on psychs, and I never had a bad trip before. I think I have done acid around 20 to 25 times in my life. When V started talking to me, his words sounded like there was some sort of echo after them. For example, if he would say something like, "Hey dude," it would sound like, hey, dude. This was making me really anxious, and I knew this was not gonna be a fun trip. I was laughing at everything he was saying, not because I thought it was funny, but because I was nervous. I wanted it to stop, but then the talking got worse. Whenever I spoke, I would hear what I said inside my head like I was wearing headphones, and my voice was overpowering everything else. I did not like this one bit. Soon later, with V's echo voice, it turned into backwards talk, and I could not understand anything he was saying and prayed for it to be over. For example, he would say a sentence, and I don't remember any of it, so I'm just going to use a general example. "Oh, lovely weather we're having today." That would sound like, "Having we're weather oh today lovely." Something to that extent. And I told him this was happening, so he started doing it on purpose. At least, I think it was on purpose. So I just wanted to be alone in my bed after that. I tell him I think it's time for the night to be over, and he leaves. I thought this would make things better, but it only got worse from here. I believe this is when I started suffering a panic or anxiety attack. My heart was pounding, my body was shaking. I thought I was gonna die, which I did. I'll explain soon. I tried to hide under the covers to make the trip go away, like it was some sort of demon trying to kill me. This worked for maybe like 5 seconds, but I went right back into extreme anxiety. I'm generally an anxious person, and I've had panic attacks many times before since 2019. It kinda just hit me one day, and I would get one once every couple months. When I was tripping though, I didn't think it was a panic attack, but I thought I was just dying. I started imagining myself being a mushroom in the ground, decomposing, and my mind just kept telling me, water. I thought if I drank some water, I'd be okay, so I had to go find some. Also, my house was completely dark at this point because I didn't want to see any visuals and make the trip worse. I found water and just took one big sip. I heard the gulp in my fucking brain. It sounded like it was in some speakers or some shit. I went back to my bed and decided to go on my phone and watch some YouTube videos to make it feel better. Unfortunately, that did not work and only made it worse because when I'd watch a video, the actual video would be horizontal, but I'd be visually seeing it vertically. I could not focus on it because it was literally impossible to watch it. The sound from the videos also sounded like it was some Dolby surround sound in my room. I didn't know what to do, so I kept on opening and closing the YouTube app, completely freaking out, not knowing what I'm gonna do next. I came up with some sort of saving grace, if you want to call it that. I called my best friend Tony and prayed he would answer the phone. He did, thank God, and I told him what I did and said I'm freaking out. He told me to calm down and said you're just having a bad trip, the normal stuff, which actually kind of helped. I started calming down talking to him, and he asked if he should come over. I was worried though, because my last friend that was over didn't help the trip, so I said, no, I'll just ride this out and hopefully not die. I told him to stay on the phone though, because that was the only time I was feeling okay. After a while though, I thought I was okay, so I eventually let him go and went to see if this trip would get better. But it did not. This is when I started going into an almost endless loop where I do the same thing over and over again. I would get up off of my bed, grab another water, and only take one sip, walk out of my side door to get fresh air, open my blinds to look outside, pet my cat on his head, then go back to my bed. I probably did this at least 5 to 7 times, or maybe more. After doing it so many times, this is when I started to believe I was dead. I was so far gone in this trip that I thought I didn't exist. I thought that I was just some soul living in purgatory or hell. I tried a bunch of things to convince myself that I was still alive, like touching my body, but I seriously could not feel it whatsoever. This made my anxiety grow to a level I've never felt before. I could not think of anyone from my friends or family. I could not figure out who or what my name was. I was just completely gone. If there was ever a bad trip, this would be one you sure wish you'd never have. I went to go get another water, and mind you, I've been finding new waters and just taking one sip and then leaving them on the floor. The next morning, there were like 10 waters all around my house. When I drank the water this time though, it felt like I had refreshed my body to feel somewhat alive again. After getting this refreshing feeling, I got a call, and it was from Tony. Seeing his name on my phone snapped me back to reality, so I answered it really quickly, and before I even could say hello, I said in a crying voice, "Dude, Come over." He laughs in a "we should have done this earlier" kind of tone. It seemed like after that moment, a huge weight got lifted off of me. I got really hungry for some music after that, so I put on some Black Sabbath, and Iron Man came on. And as I was listening to this song, I just pictured Ozzy, Tony Iommi, Geezer, and Bill Ward in the studio just being super young kids, having so much fun recording this crazy song. I could just picture them saying into the mic, "I am Iron Man," and adding a bunch of effects to make it sound like how it does in the song, and just laughing, smoking, and having the time of their lives. This made me really happy because they are one of my favorite bands and I love all their songs. It's a crazy sight to imagine yourself in the studio with them. It was almost like a dream. Although this happened, I was still having a breakdown and shaking like crazy still, but my mind was veering away from the anxiety and more onto the glowing aspect of the trip. The last scary thing that happened was that I couldn't put my shorts on. I could not tell which part of the shorts were the front or the back, and I spent 5 minutes trying to put them on. I eventually figured it out and waited for Tony. When he came over, my anxiety and paranoia completely diminished. I almost felt gay in a way. I've never been so excited to see a man in my life before. I thanked him for coming, and we just chilled on my couch and talked about my trip and our lives. We were best friends before this, but with my job, we haven't been able to hang out nearly as much. We were hanging out at least twice a week before I got my job. Then it turned to like once every couple months once I started the job. Him coming over triggered a new spark in our friendship, and we've been hanging out a lot more since the trip. So I guess that's the only positive thing I could take away from that horrible night. All I could tell you guys is the cliche, "don't be stupid" or "don't do what I did," but that's seriously true. I think I took way too much for only my second time doing shrooms. Plus the alcohol and phenibut did not help me whatsoever. Definitely do not mix those unless you're doing a little bit of each. I'd definitely like to try shrooms again, but a dose comparable to my first trip, because like I said, I had a great time. I just will never do that amount I did for one of the worst trips of my life. Well, this has been a shroom trip straight from hell, and I kinda just rambled half the time, so sorry if it felt that way to you. But yeah, I love you all and want everyone to be safe when you partake in substances like shrooms or any other psych, because it will not always go as planned.